Welcome to Career Ambitions, the podcast for corporate professionals who are ready to stop waiting and take control of their careers. If you're tired of sending applications into the void, wondering why you're not getting interviews, and watching opportunities go to people who are no more qualified than you, you're in the right place, my friends. I'm Joanne Sparrow, former HR director turned career coach, and I've spent more than 2 decades sitting on the other side of the hiring table. That means I know exactly what hiring managers think and what they say behind closed doors. Join me on this episode of Career Ambitions, where I'm pulling back the curtains on the hiring process and unapologetically exposing the truths job seekers are never told to give you the strategy and confidence to move your career forward and land your dream job or promotion. Have you ever walked out of an interview thinking, I think that went really well, only to never hear back? Or maybe you applied for a role that looked perfect on paper. You had the experience, the qualifications, you even took the time to tailor your resume, and then silence. And that silence can make you start questioning everything. Today, I want to take you behind the scenes because after 20 years in corporate HR, sitting in the rooms where hiring decisions were discussed, influencing hiring decisions, coaching managers, advising recruiters, and now supporting job seekers as a career coach, I can tell you this: hiring is rarely as simple as the best person gets the job. And once you understand what is actually happening behind closed doors, you can stop taking every rejection personally and start approaching your job search much more strategically. So today, we are talking about what really happens behind closed doors during the hiring process. Welcome back to Career Ambitions, the podcast for corporate professionals who are ready to stop feeling invisible in their careers and start making bold, strategic moves. I'm your host, Joanne Sparrow, former corporate HR director turned career coach. For over 2 decades, I worked inside corporate organizations. I supported leaders, advised hiring managers, partnered with recruiters, influenced hiring decisions, and saw firsthand how decisions were made when candidates were not in the room. And now I help job seekers understand the process from the inside out so that they can position themselves as top talent and land roles that truly align with their career ambitions. Today's podcast is one I think every job seeker needs to hear because so much of the job search feels personal. You send the application, you prepare for the interviews, you show up, you tell your story, then you wait. And then someone else gets chosen. It is very easy to assume that means you aren't good enough. But often that is not what happened at all. Behind closed doors, there are business needs, manager preferences, budget changes, internal candidates, team dynamics, risk concerns, timing issues, and sometimes, quite honestly, messy decision-making. So let's pull the curtain back. Let's start with something most job seekers don't realize. The job description is not always the whole truth. It is usually a formal document that has gone through HR, compensation, sometimes legal, and often multiple layers of approval. It tells you the responsibilities. It lists qualifications. It outlines experience they think they want. But it does not tell you the real business problem behind the hire. And this is where many candidates miss the mark. You read the job posting and think, oh, I can do these tasks. But the hiring manager is thinking, can this person solve the problem I have right now? And that is a very different question. Behind closed doors, the manager might be saying, we need someone who can build trust with internal stakeholders because this function has lost credibility. That context may never appear in the job posting. And that is why your resume and interviews cannot just be a list of responsibilities. You have to show business impact. You have to connect your experience to the likely pain point behind the role. Now let's talk about the recruiter screen. A lot of candidates treat the recruiter call like a casual first conversation. And yes, it may feel very conversational. It may feel lighter than the hiring manager interview, but make no mistake, it is still an assessment. The recruiter is usually trying to answer a few questions very quickly. Is this person aligned to the role? Do they understand what they are applying for? Can they clearly articulate their experience? Are their salary expectations in range? Are there any red flags? And would the hiring manager want to meet them? The recruiter is not always looking for the most impressive person. They are looking for the most relevant person, and that distinction matters. Because I've seen some very strong candidates lose momentum because they rambled or because they gave too much background. And I want to say this with so much care. Your experience may be excellent, but if you can't explain it clearly, the recruiter may not know how to advocate for you. And recruiters are often managing multiple roles at once. They are juggling hiring managers, approvals, candidate pipelines, compensation conversation, scheduling issues, and internal priorities. So your job on that call is not to recite your whole career history. Your job is to make it easy for them to understand three things: why this role makes sense for you, why your experience is relevant, and why the hiring manager should want to speak with you. That means your answer to "tell me about yourself" cannot be a biography. It needs to be a positioning statement. The positioning statement has to give context, relevance, it has to sound strategic, it has to help the recruiter connect your background to the role. Behind closed doors, when the recruiter debriefs with the hiring manager, you want them to be able to say, "She gets it, he understands the business need, I think this person is worth meeting." That is what you're trying to create. Now let's move to the hiring manager interview. This is where candidates often think, "I need to prove I can do everything." But hiring managers are usually evaluating more than capability. They already know you can do the job. They're interviewing you. They're asking themselves, can I work with this person? Will they make my life easier or harder? Can they operate with the level of ambiguity in this role? Will they need a lot of hand-holding? And can they influence people they need to influence? Will they represent me and the team well? And do I trust their judgment? The hiring manager may like several candidates. They may even believe several candidates are technically qualified. But the person who gets hired is usually the person who creates the most confidence. Not the loudest, not the person with the most years of experience, not always the person with the most polished resume. The person who creates confidence. And confidence in hiring comes from clarity. Can you explain what you have done? Can you clearly explain how you think? Can you clearly explain what you do in similar situations and give examples that show your judgment, ownership, and impact? That is why storytelling is so important. You need to help the hiring manager picture you in the role. Behind closed doors, that is what makes you memorable. Now let's talk about the part candidates rarely see, the debrief. After interviews, the recruiter and hiring team often come together to discuss candidates. This can happen formally in a meeting or informally through email, Slack, Teams, or quick conversations. And this is where perception gets shaped. The conversation might sound like, "So what did you think? Did they have enough strategic experience? How were they with the examples? Do you think they can handle the pace? Were they too tactical? Did they seem genuinely interested? And any concerns?" This is why consistency matters. You cannot have a strong recruiter screen and then show up vague with the hiring manager. Every interaction contributes to the hiring team's picture of you, and in the debrief, people are often trying to compare candidates who are all qualified, so the small things matter. Not small as in superficial, small as in signals. Did you answer the actual question? Did you ramble? Did you show self-awareness? Do you understand the company? Did you seem prepared? Behind closed doors, vague impressions become decision points. Hiring managers want to feel that if they hire you, they are making a smart decision. Your job is to help them feel that. This is the part I really want job seekers to hear. Sometimes you do not get the job for reasons that have very little to do with your ability. I've seen roles paused because budgets have changed, or roles rewritten halfway through the process, or internal candidates emerge. Or I've seen hiring managers change their minds about what they really needed after interviewing several candidates. And I've seen decision makers disagree. And from a candidate's perspective, it just feels like rejection. It feels like silence. It feels like being overlooked. And it feels like I must not have been good enough. But behind closed doors, the story may be very complicated. That doesn't mean you should ignore patterns. If you're applying to 100 jobs and getting 0 interviews, your resume or strategy likely needs work. If you're getting interviews but no offers, your interview strategy likely needs refinement. And if you're consistently making it to final rounds and not being selected, your positioning, career story, and closing or competitive differentiation may need sharpening. But one individual rejection does not define your value. And this is why I always encourage job seekers to look for data, not drama. Your job search is not a referendum on your worth. It is a strategy that needs to be assessed, adjusted, and strengthened. So let's talk a little bit about internal candidates. This is one of the most frustrating realities for external job seekers. Sometimes a company posts a role externally, even when there's an internal candidate. And I know how that sounds. It can certainly feel unfair or a waste of your time. It can feel like the decision was already made. And sometimes, yes, an internal candidate is strongly preferred, but not always. There are many reasons a company may still look externally. Perhaps they want to benchmark talent or need to follow an internal posting policy. They might genuinely want to compare options, or they just may want a fresh perspective from the market. As an external candidate, you cannot control this, but you can control how you show up. And here's what external candidates need to understand. Internal candidates have a relationship equity. They know the culture, systems, players, and they likely already have trust. So if you're an external, you need to create confidence faster. That means you need to be very clear about the value you bring that an internal candidate may not. Fresh perspective, external market knowledge, experience solving similar problems elsewhere, level of maturity, technical skill set. So do not go into the interview trying to be everything. Go in knowing your edge, because behind closed doors, they may be comparing you to someone they already know. You need to give them a compelling reason to take the external bet. Let's talk about culture fit. This phrase gets used a lot, and quite frankly, it is problematic when it's vague. Sometimes culture fit becomes a catch-all phrase that is not clearly defined. But when used well, hiring teams are often trying to assess working style around collaboration, handling pressure, communicating with leaders, managing conflict, receiving feedback. In corporate environments, especially in communications, PR, marketing, HR, operations, and leadership roles, how you work matters just as much as what you know, because most roles are not performed in isolation. You're influencing people, managing competing priorities, navigating politics, translating complexity, handling pressure, and building trust. So when you're in an interview, the hiring team is not only listening to your content, they are experiencing you. One of the biggest mistakes candidates make is thinking the interview is only about proving competence. It is also about creating trust. And trust comes from how you communicate. This is why I coach my clients to slow down, answer the question directly, concisely, use clear examples, and show reflection. What have you learned from that example that you've shared? And how are you using that going forward? Especially for senior professionals, self-awareness is a differentiator. It's powerful to say what I learned from that experience was, or if I were doing it again, I would do it differently by XYZ. And that shows maturity. Behind closed doors, hiring managers notice that. Now let's address something else that frustrates a lot of people. The best candidate on paper does not always get the job. And that is because hiring is not only about credentials. It is about perceived fit for the specific problem, team, manager, timing, and environment. You may have more experience than the person who got hired. You may have worked at more impressive companies, But if another candidate told a more clear story, built stronger trust, understood the business need, or felt easier to imagine in the role, they may be the ones to get the offer. And that is not always fair, but it's reality. And this is why your job search cannot rely on your resume alone. Your resume gets you considered. Your positioning gets you remembered. Your storytelling gets you believed. Your follow-up keeps you top of mind. Your network creates access, and your clarity creates confidence. This is especially important in a competitive market because when hiring slows down, companies become more cautious. So the job seeker who wins is often not the one who says, I can do this. It's the one who shows, I understand the problem, I have solved versions of this before, and here is the impact I bring. That is a much stronger position. So now that you know more about what happens behind closed doors, what should you actually do differently? First, stop treating job descriptions like checklists. Start reading between the lines. Ask yourself, why might this role exist? What business problem are they trying to solve? What pressure might the hiring manager be under? What risks are they worried about? Second, tailor your resume around relevance and results. Do not just list what you were responsible for. Show what changed because of your work. Your language that connects to business outcomes, such as increased engagement, reduced risk, improved alignment, protected reputation, accelerated adoption. Next, you want to prepare interview stories before you need them. Some examples could be around stakeholder management, conflict or change management, strategic thinking, leadership, learning from a mistake, managing under pressure, and always use the Carl method with your stories: context, action, results, and lastly, learning. Not because you need to sound scripted, but because structure helps people understand your value. And finally, at the end of your interview, you want to ask stronger questions. Don't ask questions like, what's the culture like? What are next steps? Can I work from home? What does success look like? Those are fine, but go deeper. Ask a question like, what is the biggest business priority for this role in the first 6 months? My favorite question to ask a hiring manager at the end of the interview is, okay, so I'm in the role and it's a year has passed. What would I have had done in this past year to be successful in the role? That question alone forces that manager to picture you in that role and share what that success looks like. These questions show that you're thinking like someone who wants to solve the right problems and thinking strategically. And finally, you want to follow up. Your thank you note should not just say thank you for your time. It should reinforce your fit. That kind of follow-up helps the hiring manager remember what you want them to remember. I want to speak directly to the job seeker who is feeling discouraged right now. Please stop assuming silence means you're not talented. Please stop rewriting your entire resume every time you apply for a job. Stop walking into interviews hoping they will see your value without you naming it clearly. And stop treating networking like asking for favors. Your career story is not a chronological report, so please stop telling your career story like a timeline. It is a strategic case for why you are the right person for this next opportunity. And when you understand what hiring teams are actually discussing behind closed doors, you will prepare differently. So what really happens behind closed doors in hiring? A lot more than most candidates realize. Hiring teams are comparing risk. They're discussing confidence. They're evaluating clarity. They're weighing internal dynamics. And they're thinking about business problems. And yes, sometimes the process is flawed. Decisions get delayed. Communication is poor. Sometimes strong candidates are overlooked. But you're not powerless in the process. You can build relationships before roles are posted. You can become easier to advocate for. You can tell better, stronger career stories. And that is what I want for you. Not just more applications, a smarter strategy. Not just more interviews, better interviews, and not just a job, the right job with the right level of visibility, impact, and opportunity for where you want your career to go next. If this episode gave you a new perspective on what is really happening in the hiring process, I want you to share it with someone who is job searching right now, because sometimes the most powerful thing a job seeker can hear is, "You're not broken. The process is complicated. And once you understand how it works, you can move through it with more strategy and confidence." And if you're ready to stop guessing and start approaching your job search with an insider strategy, I would love to support you. This is exactly the work I do with my clients inside my coaching program. We clarify your positioning, strengthen your resume and LinkedIn profile, build your interview stories, create a networking strategy, and help you show up as the candidate hiring teams remember. Thank you for listening to Career Ambitions. I'm Joanne Sparrow, and I'll see you in the next episode. Thank you so much for listening to Career Ambitions. If this episode gave you a new perspective, a practical takeaway, or even that little spark of confidence you needed, I would love for you to follow the show and leave a review. To celebrate the launch of Career Ambitions, I am running a special giveaway until May 30th, 2026. You could win 3 months of free coaching with yours truly, plus a pair of Apple earbuds. To enter, leave a review where you're listening today. Each review counts as an entry into a giveaway. The draw will be held on May 30th, and I cannot wait to celebrate one lucky listener with 3 months of career coaching to help them move forward with more clarity and confidence. Your next career move deserves a strategy. And if you're looking for more support, connect with me at Career Coach Joe on Instagram or joannesparrow.com to take your next step. See you in the next episode of Career Ambitions.